And so I'm going to be talking about the 10 abodes, particularly about the 11th abode, the abode of no abiding today. This is some principles that unite Chan Buddhism with Huayan Buddhism. People are probably familiar with Chan Buddhism because Chan Buddhism is very similar to Zen, same Chinese character. And Han Buddhism and Huayan Buddhism flourished around the same time in the Tang Dynasty. Tang Dynasty survived much longer because their teachers and monasteries were hidden away in the southern mountains. As the mind and the body always jittery, moving around, not stable. So when we do meditation, for example, one of the basic forms of meditation is to focus on the breath. Sounds pretty easy. I'm going to focus on my breath. Just focus on my breath. That's all I'm going to do. It doesn't take but a breath or two before the mind is off thinking about, what am I going to do later? What did I do yesterday? Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to get that? The mind will just start jumping around. We call monkey mind. So the focal point of using the breath is to remind us, oh, my mind is jumping around. Let me bring it, just gently bringing my mind back to the breath. This is the beginning practice. Or maybe we focus on the body. Bring the mind back to focusing on the body. We can be grateful that our body is working as well as it is. We recognize the body is impermanent. My body is not the same now as when it was 19, 18, 17. So that this situation of the mind abiding always, we use a focal point. Or we send the mind to be in a state of loving kindness or compassion too. These are good things. So when the Bodhisattva begins to practice, the Bodhisattva also has a focal point. Where is he going to put, or he or she are going to put the mind, so the mind doesn't wander all over the place? So there are these 10 focal points, these 10 places where it can abide. So the first place, it abides in developing the aspiration to be a benefit to all beings. So focusing on being a benefit to all beings, breathing in, breathing out, nourishing that, nurturing that, and so on and so forth, repeatedly practicing this. I won't go through all 10, but the Bodhisattva goes through these 10 stages of focus. And when the Bodhisattva reaches this state of going through all 10, he gets a little graduation at the end. The abode of lustration or consecration, he gets, oh, I'm able to pull all of this together. And then at that point, oh yes, the Bodhisattva is very happy. The mind is very clear, able to abide in these places rather than being disturbed about the wants and worries about the daily life. And then there's a challenge. There's a switch that takes place where the mind no longer is required to abide anywhere. So the mind abides in no place. This is called non-abiding. And when the mind does not abide anywhere, then these disturbances, these things that attract the mind, no longer arise. This is particular moment of awakening that takes place may be difficult to understand at first. So, when speaking of where the mind abides, the Bodhisattva focuses on the 10 abodes, each with has 10 stages, has 10 qualities within it. So that would make 100 qualities and 100 things to study. A lot. These are the places where the mind should abide. Mental abiding is another way to say that the mind gets caught up in its own chattering, and by focusing in this way, the chattering goes away, and the mind now abides in what will help it attain awakening. But the uninstructed worldling, the person who's not aware of this, doesn't know about this training. Instead, the run-of-the-mill person is caught up with the mundane world of striving for praise, getting what's wanted, success, and comfort. They do all that they can to avoid insult, getting what they don't want, failure, and discomfort. The ordinary mind chatters and away endlessly about the faults of others and themselves, about what is entertaining and what is not, about their gains and their losses, about what they love and what they hate. This culture in which we live right now is very, I will make a little commentary here, is so much focused on entertainment. You can just look around and see who is it that's getting paid. People that get paid are the people who are entertaining us, not the physicists, not the philosophers, not the wise, but the entertainers. And what do people do with their time? They're on their devices, on their technology. They're not paying attention to other people or developing social skills, so they become isolated. And this is particularly true for young men, more at risk than young women. And the algorithms of this entertainment world is very much focused on profit. And what is it that profits them? Is selling danger, anger, violence. So we wonder, how come there's so much danger, anger, violence in our culture today? Well, if we're being fed that so much, what's the result? Be careful. End of social commentary. So when the mind is chattering away and not focused, it gets caught up in what's called the default mode network, which is things that scientists are studying. Richard Davidson and other people focusing on this particular issue of what happens within the mind using functional MRI. We can see what goes on inside the brain when a person's mind is wandering around aimlessly, and how the certain areas of the brain get hooked up with each other. So the wandering area of the brain, I've talked about this before in the past, the posterior cingulate and precuneus at the top gets hooked into the amygdala, the part of the brain that has to do with negativity, anger, aggression, and then hooks into the prefrontal cortex, the area where the mind is thinking about negative things. And this triangle we call default mode network. Now, when a person practices a lot of meditation, and learns to be focused in a positive way, you can see the sequence is different. It goes from the anterior cingulate, being in the present moment, to the nucleus accumbens, through the insula, which is the area of the brain that is focused on or integrating the bodily awareness, and into the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, positive thinking. So this is the studies that they've done on this subject. I've talked about this before, so I don't want to go into it so much. So the instructed noble disciple escapes this calamity. The bodhisattva mind resides in the 10 abodes instead of residing in all of this default mode network, and develops a benevolent focal point where wisdom and compassion begin to unite. And so before moving on to the next set of practices called the 10 practices, one additional abode needs to be mentioned. This is the abode of non-abiding. So this idea of non-abiding, before we get into the Avantamsaka Sutra, this is found in the Diamond Sutra. So there's a very famous story about the great lineage master number 6. His name was Huineng. He was working for his family in the wood delivery business, firewood. So he delivered some firewood to a business, and when he walked outside, there was an old man who was reciting a text from memory. He was reciting the Diamond Sutra. And as Huineng was walking by, he heard one verse that stuck out to him. So this verse, it woke him up. He suddenly had this awakening. Now, this verse was in chapter 10 of 32 verses, sections of this text. So he had to wait probably another 20, 30 minutes before the old man finished reciting, and said to the old man, where did you learn this? He said, over in Eastern Mountain. So immediately he went back to the shop where his mother was running the business, and he gave her all of his money, and he took off his smock and he says, I'm going to Eastern Mountain. Immediately. So he went to Eastern Mountain, and he went to see the great monk who was the 5th lineage master at that time, Hongren. And when he met him, they had an audience together, and I won't go into the story, but immediately there was this awareness that Hongren had that, oh, this person from the small town, he's awakened. So he started teaching him. But it was all based on him hearing this one phrase from the Diamond Sutra. So what was that phrase that he heard? I will translate it here. They should give rise to an intention with their minds not dwelling anywhere. So in Chan Buddhism, people study this. This is a very important line from the Diamond Sutra. They should give rise to an intention with their minds not dwelling anywhere. So this is the 11th abode. You have the 10 abodes, and then before the person can move on, they have to realize, oh, this is a skillful means. The 10 abodes are a skillful means. It's a way of training my mind, so then my mind does not have to abide anywhere. But when we study this, sometimes we study this and we don't understand the context. So earlier, just right before this was said, there is a section that has to do with adornment. So Yeah, he tells this story in the Platform Sutra, but apparently he gave another Dharma talk. And in that Dharma talk, he gave a commentary on the Diamond Sutra. Now, he was illiterate, so it was probably written down by one of his disciples. This is in a collection of commentaries on the Diamond Sutra that was done by a Korean monk, put all of this together. These things have never been translated into English. So I'm excited about seeing them for the first time. So these are part of what the commentary on the five masters of the Diamond Sutra. So this is the commentary, and it quotes actually from the original text. The Buddha said, Subhuti was his disciple. What do you think? Do bodhisattvas adorn the Buddha land? Subhuti replied, no, world honored one. Why? Adorning the Buddha land is not any adornment. It's merely called adornment. Therefore, Subhuti, the great bodhisattva, should give rise to a pure mind in this way. They should not give rise to the mind abiding in form. They should not give rise to the mind abiding in sound, smell, taste, touch, or phenomena. They should give rise to the mind that abides nowhere. This is another translation of the same verse. So right before talking about not abiding anywhere, he's talking about the adornment of the Buddha land. Now, why is this term adornment something I'm bringing up? Because this is the same term as found in the title of the Avantamsaka Sutra, flower adornment. The Buddha land is the place in the mind where the mind is focused on the Buddha. It's like, it refers to like building stupas and temples. That's one of the images that are used, offering incense and so forth. Of a Buddha land means a domain where the Buddha teaches and transforms sentient beings. I don't want to go into too much more detail because of our time. So adorning means to pay homage, pay respect to this Buddha land, where the Buddha gives his teachings, where the teachings are available. So Huineng, in his commentary, he concludes, one should give rise to a pure mind in this way, refers back to the idea of non-adornment. Earlier it said, give rise to pure faith, which is the awakening of a single moment. But here, to give rise to a pure mind refers to a complete cultivation of whole nature, all six parameters of the perfections, and the myriad practices are ultimately for the sake of cultivating the pure mind. The original ground is itself the stage of ultimate culmination. And for those who speak Chinese, I put it up there for you because this is the first time that this has been translated into Chinese, from the Chinese into English. We say that the mind needs to have the skillful means of knowing where to put itself. So at first, the beginning meditator puts the mind on the breath, on the body, on loving kindness, on insight. These are the things where the mind, but then in the bodhisattva path, the bodhisattva puts the mind on being a benefit to all beings, nourishing that aspiration, repeatedly practicing that. So, another commentary on the same verse by Master Zhongmi. Master Zhongmi was the fifth of the five great Huayan masters. Zhongmi was nearly implicated in a plot to overthrow the emperor. He was not involved in this at all, but one of the conspirators attempted to suddenly take the precepts and join the monastery in order to escape being caught by the authorities who were after him. And he wasn't able to do that because you're not allowed to take vows if you have the authorities after you. So he had to leave, and the conspirator was caught and was chopped off. But they tried to implicate Zhongli, and they were going to chop off his head, or even giving him one night of sanctuary. And Zhongli, he just sat very calm, still, peaceful. He was ready to have his head chopped off. And that scared the people who were going to kill him. It scared him. He was so calm. So they said, "Okay, go back home, go back to the monastery. Leave us alone." This is a great Zhongli. So he had a commentary on this as well. Same verse, same story. He says at the bottom here, to give rise to the mind in this context is to awaken the correct wisdom. This is the true mind. If there were no mind at all, it would fall into the view of nihilistic emptiness. Here's the Chinese. So we don't want to say that putting the mind nowhere is saying that nothing exists or that there's no future. That would be too far. That would be too much. So a few hundred years earlier, there was the great monk Asanga. He's one of the two great founders of the Yogacara school in India. He also wrote a commentary on this from the Sanskrit. This is based on the removal of obstacles. Among the 12 types of motivation, this one refers to eliminating the minor clinging and engaging, minor is not the right word here, eliminating the subtle clingings and engaging in contemplation and cultivation of the path. The sutra says, Subhuti, if a bodhisattva were to say, I am abiding in the Buddha land, and so on and so forth. And the Sangha continues, if one thinks of adorning the pure Buddha land, then with regard to form and so forth, discriminating thinking and indulging in sense-based desires arise. In order to eliminate this, the sutra says, therefore, Subhuti, all great bodhisattvas should give rise to a pure mind in this way without abiding. Non-abiding is the form, do not abide in form and sound still. These are the senses, and here's the Chinese. So I have several other commentaries. If you want to learn about them, stay tuned. They're not in the book that I'm going to be publishing soon, but it will be in the next one. So thank you all very much for listening to my rambling. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings never be separated from the altruistic joy which is free from suffering, and may all beings dwell in the great equanimity which is free from attachment, aversion, and ignorance.